liked your intro for the last one. Me fumbling around with fucking Audacity.
I cut most of it out. I only left like 1 or 2 bits in.
4 minutes of me going, wait a minute, why not? It's not working.
Hold on a second.
Oh, that's not it.
And then the podcast ends after that.
Right.
You just cut out all of the movie completely.
I'm sure people were delighted.
I was tempted to close it out at that and then just leave it. Yeah. Well, because there's a part where I say, can we talk about the movie now? And I just wanted to have it end there. Can we talk about the movie now?
That could be a good April Fool's episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what's not an April Fool's episode? This episode of the show. Because technically this episode is going as of right now. So yeah, so there's 4 of us here, which is a big number for this show. Normally there's only 3 of us. But there are 4 of us, and we are continuing Begley on Begley month with some more hot Begley on Begley action.
Yeah, that's the best kind.
I am joined once again by the man of the hour, Wake Up Heavies, Mark Begley.
Hello. I didn't come up with a clever quote from the movie this time because we haven't been doing this.
Shame. Also joining
Mercy.
me.
I'll say mercy. Here we go.
Also joining us from the East Coast is the owner and proprietor of Pulp-Serenade.com, Cullen Gallagher.
For anyone not watching this on Zoom, I only have on my computer. That is not the way that she says it in the movie. I cannot do sexy voice. So any recruiters looking for phone sex voices, I'm sorry. That would be a very bad choice.
But I would point them in the direction of our final guest co-host. He is the host of the Projection Booth podcast, the man with the sexiest voice that I know, Mr. Mike White.
There are a lot of voices out there, but yours is different. I like it.
See, you can do it.
There you go.
That sounds good. That is good inflection.
Thank you.
Did she invent phone sex?
I'm curious. I mean,
guess
phones
I'm
were
thinking
around
of,
before CDs.
Yeah, but I guess I'm thinking of like actual 1-900 numbers that people used to call because that's how it felt. But honestly, she's not getting any money.
I would rather have phone sex with Robert's Blossom. So
I don't know, man. Candy Clark really did it for me in American Graffiti.
She does it for me in just about every movie she's in.
Robert's Blossom really did it for me in Deranged.
There is that.
I love that movie.
So speaking of that, we are going to be talking about Citizens Band, otherwise known as Handle with Care, which is a film that is set in my not home state, but the state I call home right now, Nebraska, and it is directed by Jonathan Demme. I don't know why I said that ahead of time. I normally say it after the fact. So the film is directed by Jonathan Demme, written by Paul Brickman, and it stars Paul LeMat and a whole smattering of Jonathan Demme regulars as a small-town Nebraskan CB radio. Man, everybody in this town sure has CB radios, folks.
It was the craze, man.
It's a CB town, baby.
This is just like it was for real in 1977. Not really. No.
I was just to say, like, I know because we talked a little bit about it on Smokey and the Bandit. We've never done an episode on Convoy, but in the 70s, there was this kind of interest in, I wouldn't say Southern, but Southern-ish stuff. Keep on Truckin', Convoy, Burt Reynolds Naked, those kinds of things.
White Line Fever. Yeah, it was a whole thing. BJ and the Bear was on TV. We've talked about that before, Chris. But yeah, normal, everyday people actually had CB radios in their living rooms or wherever. And yeah, my uncle, just a couple blocks away from where I grew up, he had a big old CB rig in his living room. So it was a thing for sure.
So Mark Begley, I have to ask you, why Citizens Band? With all of these Ed Begley Jr. performances, why yet again another one where he's essentially on screen only once?
This one, as I was scrolling through his filmography, and I was kind of leaning towards things from the 70s and 80s just because that's my wheelhouse. And I saw that title and I was like, wait a minute, that sort of rings a bell. And when I clicked on it, saw that it was a Jonathan Demme film. Early Jonathan Demme is a blind spot for me. I still haven't even seen Melvin and Howard for some reason. And then when I looked down a little further and saw the cast, I was like, oh, I don't even need to look any further. This is going to be the one. My unseen one for the group, and Paula Mack, Candy Clark, Roberts Blossom, Bruce McGill, Charles Napier, all those guys I love seeing in different movies, and to have them all crammed into one was just perfection as far as I was concerned. And Harry Northup, I don't want to forget him.
Can't forget him. Do you even see him?
He's the Nazi. He's
it comes out
the
a
Red
couple
Baron.
times.
Okay.
It's
at night though.
Yeah, it's at night at his house, and
bunch
then
of pea pickers.
And then he's at the end. He's like,
he pops up. He's the creeper. He's the creeper in the forest when Paul Lamatt's looking for his dad.
That's
How could we find him if we don't even know what he looks like?
right.
Yeah. Cullen, what about you? Had you ever seen this film before?
I hadn't. I've been wanting to for years because of all the actors I like. Jonathan Demme I like, CD culture. So it's been on my radar for a long time. And I think we talked about it briefly during the Smokey episode. And then when I heard y'all were covering it, I was thrilled when you invited me.
And you, Mr. Mike White?
I've been a fan of this movie for, I don't know, a couple decades. I just kind of happened upon it in the mid 90s. And I like these ensemble cast movies. I always kind of pick on Robert Altman and a little bit on Alan Rudolph. Sometimes their ensemble films don't really click with me. And I will admit, like, Nashville left me a little cold when I saw it the first time. And then I see something like this and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is kind of what I would have liked Nashville to be. I could really relate to these characters and found them much more human and humane than I necessarily did some of the characters in Nashville and some of these other ensemble films. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. And I mean, the thing I love about Demme is his regular cast of characters. And I mean, yeah, you got Charles Napier, sign me up. And he's got such a prominent role in this. It really could have been the Chrome Angel story.
There's no Charles Napier hanging from a jail cell in this movie cut open, which is really funny. So there's kind of a funny thing going on here that I hadn't mentioned yet. So we're obviously this has been on the schedule for 4 months now. For whatever reason, Sunday evening, I've been reading a book a week. I've been trying to, and I've been keeping pretty good to it. For whatever reasons on Scribd, Silence of the Lambs comes up. Okay, so I listen to it and finish it in 24 hours. That's how good it is. This morning, I rewatched the movie, and then I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, okay, so Citizens Band is directed by Jonathan Demme. Right, that's why I've seen Charles Napier twice in the last, 48 hours or whatever it was. So I was trying to figure out, I was like, where have I seen? Right, because that's also another Jonathan Demme movie with, like, half of the people that he works with. A lot of the kind of his crew of people, his kind of repertory players. But this movie, compared to that one, a lot different. But it has some of the same qualities that movie does, especially when we're talking about focusing on the small town life and aspect of these people's lives and kind of the quirkiness surrounding everybody, because everybody has something going on. Everybody.
Yep. When I see Charles Napier, I used to think of Silence of the Lambs. Nowadays, I think about his roles in Russ Meyer films, and that's about the only thing I can't shake it out of my head, because I remember being really shocked when I started watching those movies and going, oh man, this guy is like an actor. He's not like some underground softcore porn guy. This guy went on and did all kinds of things.
I mean, I grew up with him in the Blues Brothers, so he's always going to be the driver of the Winnebago to me.
Yeah, that and a couple other things from the 80s and stuff, and you just see him and he'd be this.
First Blood Part 2.
Oh, yeah.
Jumps to mind.
Oh, yeah.
See, and I still haven't seen that one, so.
I haven't seen any of those Rambo movies still.
The first one is fantastic, period.
End of sentence.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Go further at your own peril.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well.
I love them all, but that's the first is by far the best. The other ones I grew up watching, and I have. As I said, it's a much longer. I'll have to shut myself up now because otherwise I'll be talking about All the Rambo movies, which I have right by my side, and the great Turkish version, Rampage.
Nice.
He had him waiting. He was like, ba-boom!
No.
Yeah. It was like
Charles Napier is going to come up. I should get my Rambo collection.
But
I
I was
like
right within arm's reach.
If you say Charles Napier's name in the mirror 3 times, your chin grows 1 size.
Boy, right?
I'm going to try that tonight.
But to your point, Mike, this story, it's ostensibly it's about Paul Le Mat as Spider, the kind of local...
Spider, why don't you dance the fucking drink over here?
Why don't you dance the fucking drink over here? Wow. We didn't even have to try for that one. I didn't even think about that one until now. Jesus Christ. But he plays a character that's supposed to be the main character of the movie, but ends up kind of being more the person who keeps everybody together in kind of a web of all these CB radio.
A web?
He's a spider!
Noise.
Deep Insight, brought to you by the Culture Cast. I mean, like you said, though, Mike, it's an ensemble cast, and so in it being an ensemble cast, Paul Le Mat's character kind of is... He brings the story back at the end, but he kind of is just there most of the time, driving the plot forward, right?
Right. He helps introduce all the characters. I mean, he ostensibly helps introduce Chrome Angel, the Charles Napier character, because he rescues him. He's one of 2 people that he rescues, and then, gets that honor by the Shriners or whoever it is towards the end of the film. It's Bruce McGill as his brother, Candy Clark as his former girlfriend, Robert Blossom as his dad, and then through him trying to clean up the airwaves, we get to meet so many of these other characters. But I would say, he's probably... Let's say he's 60% of the story, or at least driving 60%, but Napier really is driving the other 40, because I find that the stuff with the prostitute who he talks into getting a Winnebago, again with the Winnebago, and then also the 2 wives, I think that's, that could have really have been spun out into a movie unto itself, but they might not have had enough material there. So having the Paul Le Mat be the larger story, and especially his hunt for all of these rogue CB operators, I mean, that is probably the most fun part of it, is the montage of him going after all these people with his large companion.
Oh, jeez.
It's more of like the Chrome Angel is almost the entire story, and then there's like these little vignettes of like they go to the Nazis' house, they go to they go to the priest, they go to the hustler, which is interesting because I like that structure and format of the movie, and I enjoyed this movie. I think for the most part, I think it's a little narratively disorganized, and it's more of one of those slice of life movies, less trying to tell some sort of really convoluted or complicated story. It's pretty straightforward, but I will say it's nice to see Richard Bright in something other than just, The Godfather.
Right.
Right? Which was really weird, too. Seeing him in this was just like, this seems like the kind of movie that should have had Harry Dean Stanton in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The only person that was missing was, and I always get his name backwards, Tracy Walter. Is it Tracy Walter or Walter Tracy?
Tracy Walters.
Okay.
I think it's with an S at the end. I could be wrong.
He was the demi regular that I was missing that I think could have had a role in this.
Yeah, I don't know when those 2 started working together. I know for sure he was in Married to the Mob, but I don't know if he was all the way back into like Swing Shift and Melvin and Howard. But I would be surprised if he was in Swing Shift.
It is surprising that he's not in this movie, just given the look of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
given the character he plays in Silence of the Lambs would have made perfect sense in this movie. Just like a small town cop, like, there you go.
He would have fit right in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just him on the radio.
Yeah.
With that little bit of yeah. Sometimes a bug will get caught in the throat.
All the refuse down there. Yeah, it's weird because obviously this takes place in Nebraska, and everybody in town has a CB radio. It's amazing. I mean,
love that's what it's like now, isn't it?
Right. Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, get my CB radio out here, clunk, get on. Any truckers looking for a 45 or 110? I don't know. Don't say loud.
How's your modulation, Chris?
Well, see, that's the thing. I was saying on the last episode, I have my ham radio license, but this has nothing to do with that. This is pretty far afield from that.
Yeah, I think it's a little different. Yeah. Now that you say that.
I don't know what rules there are governing. I mean, I know that there are rules, given that there is an FCC kind of thing about, are you the FCC? No, but I'll pretend to be the FCC.
Commie.
Yeah, commie bastard.
I have a question for you, Chris, because I've not been in Nebraska, but you all were talking about, a small town cop would have fit into this story. There's really no law enforcement in this movie. And one of the feelings I kept getting is there actually seems to be a real vital need for these CB radios for these people that need help. And, he's performing a service. Right. And he's the first person on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, react is a real thing. I mean, when the end comes, as they would say, when the end times begin, the CB radio thing is still going to be a thing. People are going to be using that. Like, that's what people will be using to communicate. So
the only time you really see them is at the beginning when Chrome Angel goes off the road and Spider calls Smiling Jack to get his tow truck out there, and he's involved with a pileup, and you can see at least ambulance lights. I'm not sure, I didn't really think about it at the time, noticing that police were missing for the most part in the film, but that's really the only point you see anything like that. And he does, and I don't know if this was in the movie and I just completely missed it. It was I breezed through the script real fast this afternoon, and it's pretty much the film. There are 2 scenes that revolve around Pam at the school that aren't in the film, but everything else is, except for maybe a few lines of dialogue, everything else is like in there. And that whole deal at the Legionnaires where he's getting the award, it's something that's happened to him before. He goes home with the medal, and in the script, he puts it in a drawer where there's like 5 other of those medals. So he is kind of the go-to hero for the town, and seems pretty adept at being there when trouble is happening.
That's true. Yeah, it just happens to be on that road when the plane crashes.
Right. Well, and my favorite thing is that he makes a living repairing CB radio. Man.
A living.
Yeah, a living.
Kind of.
Living in his dad's junkyard.
Right. Very fair, with his dad who keeps threatening to kill his dog.
We have to talk about the dad. I mean, that other than deranged, this is, I think, the largest role that I've seen Roberts Blossom play. I can't think of, beside those 2 movies, where he's had that much screen time and that much dialogue.
For me, he's always there with Christine. I mean, but to your point, I don't think he's in the film nearly as much. And then I think younger people will just know him as the old man from Home Alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
I don't, but there are people that do.
Yeah.
My daughter got home when I was watching it, and I was like, that's the old guy from Home Alone. And she just kind of looked at me like, all right.
Yeah.
As soon as he showed up on screen, my girlfriend was like, it's the guy from Home Alone.
Yeah. But that relationship is an interesting part of the film, where Spider try as he might through the whole movie to make a connection with his dad. And you get this, as the film goes on, you get more of the dynamic of the family with the brother. And there's apparently 2 other brothers. One's out of state and one's in prison, and their mom has obviously passed away. And it's just he either completely ignores Spider or just answers with okay. And the only other thing he really ever says to him is the dog dies. And yet he just electrifies when that CB radio comes on, and is so animated and expressive and funny and kind to the people that he's talking to over the radio. And you get a better sense of it in the script, even though, like I say, they're pretty much the exact same thing. that I guess I was missing it in the film, that trucking was his life and he gave it up or had to stop. And so that was his connection through his entire life, and really never made that connection with his family, which is kind of a, bittersweet thing.
Well, there's also that scene with Candy Clark where she's like talking to just him, and the two of them are talking, and he's like, he says something to the effect of like, I don't know what I would do. I don't know what he would do without me here. Cause he's worried that his son is like completely inept and unable to live on his own. And then his son thinks the same way about him.
We haven't seen much proof that Paul Le Mat. I mean, that could be the case. Like,
right? Yeah,
he doesn't seem to have made much of a life for himself, and he seems to sort of be stuck. And he does sort of seem to start to have this urge to go out and do something when the relationship with Candy Clark's not working, the relation with his brother's not working, the relation with his dad is not working. And he's at the end, he's fed up, and he tells his dad, like, I'm going to go try and make something of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great, because again, the entire thing between Robert Splossom and Paul Le Mat is good. And I'm glad that it kind of does have a moment where things change, because I was just expecting them to not even... I was expecting them to not do anything with it towards the end, because it was like, the time's ticking down here, folks. Ending is coming. I don't know. I think my issue probably overall with the movie, or kind of at most of the time, is just the pacing. It seems to not be able to keep a consistent pace because, again, it is splitting its time between two stories that are pretty disparate for the most part, too. I mean, Chrome Angel, Charles Napier, and Spider don't really interact after the beginning until the end.
Right.
I was getting a little bit, the second watch, I could have done with a little bit less of the Chrome Angel storyline. I think it could have lost one of the scenes with the two wives. So Chrome Angel is a trucker traveling cross country. He's set himself up with two families. And I think we talked about, or I've talked about before, the idea of having two families, it just boggles my mind. Like, I can barely handle, all the stuff that comes along with one family. Why would you want to do that twice?
You're not a trucker. You're not a man over the road.
Yeah.
That's all right.
But there's a couple of scenes with just the wives, and it's like that could have all probably been one scene. And I love it. And the actresses are all fantastic. All those, and Anne Wedgeworth. The only thing I really ever remember her from was Three's Company when I was a kid. I know I've seen the other two gals and other things, and I can't think of what off the top of my head. They're all great. And I love the dialogue that those two wives share with each other, because it's not just like that stereotypical, they're going after each other. It's kind of like, well, I'm finding out this stuff about my husband from you, and you're finding out this stuff about him from me. And, the whole thing with their weddings, one was a Methodist service and one was Episcopal, just weird stuff like that. And it's entertaining, but I really am more invested in the Spider story in the film.
Hey, I loved the wives, and on repeat viewings, their chemistry and their timing was just such a joy. That was one of my favorite parts, especially when it gets to the two of them drunk in the hotel room, smoking cigarettes, talking about, how they the ritual of having sex and what he would say to them.
Yes. So good.
I'm trying to see what I think Portland Angel, Connie, trying to see what I've seen her in, because she seems awfully familiar.
Yeah,
but
I mostly know her from Little Murders.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
Oh, I think you would like that one.
I agree. It's a good movie.
It's pretty.
Is that the one with Donald Sutherland?
Yeah. Well, barely Donald Sutherland. Okay. More like a cameo from him. It's more Ellie Gould and her. Mm-hmm. And then, Vincent Gardenia, Chris. We were just talking about him the other night when we were talking about the sperm donor from
Barney Miller.
Barney Miller, yeah.
Speaking of Barney Miller, Will Seltzer is in this movie.
Yes.
Right, who we were trying to figure out what we saw him from, and then I happened upon the little piece of trivia that he was the second choice for George Lucas for Luke Skywalker, behind Mark Hamill, which is mind-blowing in a lot of ways.
What a different world this would have been.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Seltzer. I've been wanting
Who was he in the film?
Warlock. He was the kid that Elektra is
Right, getting off.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like how we went to the makeout point to do that.
In his father's car.
I think my favorite character in the movie is the hustler, the little kid reading porno over the CB.
And I love that when his mom's like, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a nice surprise.
Yeah, this is what happens, Larry.
So just when we're talking about favorite characters, I love the dog in this movie so much. The
Yes.
dog that when they feed it, it tries to put its paw in the bowl. Just like
And that was in the script.
That was.
Wow.
Yep.
Mark, that just made my night. That little detail.
I was really surprised.
That sort of seems to sum up the dog for me. It's a dog that's going to put its paw in a bowl instead of eat it.
And I love the gag with the stew meat. And it had me going. I'm like, hey, please, no. Did he really go through with this?
Please.
Same.
And she's just eating it. She's just eating it. I think he could have simmered this a little bit longer.
It's Robert's Blossom, of course.
I mean,
he could have done that. Yes.
After having watched Deranged a handful of times.
I was about to say I was halfway expecting it. This is the first time I've seen Robert's Blossom not antagonistic, so...
Yeah. If anything, I would have liked to have seen more Bruce McGill and get that relationship fleshed out a little bit more. I did like that whole thing of him being blood and that's kind of his... It's funny because they can't connect with their father until Spider gets on the CB, and then he just perks up, and then he's almost disappointed that it's Spider on the other end of it. I mean, he just won't rouse at all until he calls, he pop a thermodyne, and then boom, he's right up. But I would have liked to have seen even more, and I did like how Bruce McGill was giving him a hard time as far as like, well, I never called him Pop. I never called him Dad. Just the strained relationship. I could have gone for more of that. And Bruce McGill's so fucking good. He's always good in everything that he's in. So it's like, come on, just give me a little bit more of him. And is he some sort of meathead gym teacher? Why is he this way? Is he this way? Or is that just what he's doing, as a day job? Is this what he wants to be doing with his life? I would love to get more of his motivation.
I agree. It's weird because they can't connect to their dad, and then they can't connect to one another, it would seem, either until they do, by realizing they can't connect to their dad. So they can only connect to one another.
To me, that relationship seemed like such a classic brother relationship between the two of them. There's this competitiveness that compels them to be opposites, because clearly the Bruce McGill character owns his own house. He seems to have been successful athlete. Now he has this job he's teaching. He has his life together. And then you have his brother who's just disheveled, wearing yesterday's clothes, living at home, junkyard, spends more time being the FCC or the FBI, according to Candy Clark, instead of spending time with her. I mean, it's that totally made sense. Like they can't actually express how much they, their anger, their love, their frustration. They just, and I mean, I kind of get the feeling that the parents doted on Paul LeMat, and that's probably fueled Bruce McGill to be even more different, which ultimately drove him further away.
And this is Bruce McGill's first acting role.
No.
Yeah.
That's what I read, yeah.
Really?
This is the year before Animal House?
Really?
So,
okay, I always thought Animal House was right there at the beginning.
This was 77 and Animal House was 78.
Wow. So he grew that sweet mustache in between this?
Yeah.
And got that buzz cut, that flat top.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I was really surprised when he showed up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Somebody do that, please. I can't.
I can't do it.
Literally no idea how he did it.
I'll make myself gag if I try to.
Of all the things from Animal House that stick in my head, that's one of them. Just Bruce McGill at the top of the stairs on that motorcycle. Just fucking playing his throat, and then go, yeah, so
ramming speed.
Oh my god.
He was on my wife, I think shortly after it was sometime last evening. She had recorded the end of a Rizzoli and Isles episode.
Love that show.
She's starting to get into that.
Same.
And I knew Bruce McGill was on there because she's watched other episodes. And who was the coroner in this episode? Ed Begley Jr.
Nice.
And I was like, I just fucking watched the two of them in Citizens Band.
Oh, and Begley. Ed Begley in this movie, essentially only on screen once.
No.
Kind of see him through the confessional.
And he is running through the forest at the end with a walkie-talkie or a handheld, I guess, CB radio, and he's in VO a couple of other times. But that scene in the confessional is great. And at the end, he just kind of calls him out on it and says, "We gone," or whatever, and closes the.
Well, it's so weird because it's a confessional. I mean, Swider just has to come out the door.
Right. Yeah. Or wait for him to come out. Exactly. He didn't even have to go in there. He could have just waited for him to come out. I think he was trying to confirm. He's sitting up there trying to make out the voice, which to my ears, it sounded like it was a little bit different. Like his CB voice was a little bit overdone, and he's got the Southern drawl again. And I was
about to say, what's the deal with that? This is Nebraska.
You guys are in the South, right?
People don't have accents here. This state is one of the states where people like to have like telemarketers and people who are on the phones constantly because they don't have an accent here. None. It's the most pleasurable of accents.
He just does it. I watched Blue Collar today, which is set in Detroit, and he's doing a Southern accent.
He just really likes
not that
Southern
people from the South didn't go up there to work on cars, but
anything south of Canada is the South,
right?
Apparently,
right. Yeah. Ed Begley doing the Southern accent again. At least he's not
and he
wearing
shows
overalls this time.
And he shows up at the end to marry them in the cars, which I just absolutely love. That whole end. Wedding scene.
That's the scene I was talking about.
If I had known that was a thing, that's probably how I would have gone. Because the regular weddings suck ass.
I agree. CB pre-wedding.
Yeah,
you still can renew your wedding vows on CB. Why
so
not?
how about those handles that the characters go by and that we mostly know them from? I had to listen really carefully yesterday when I watched it to actually pick out character names for everybody, because on the cast list, the credits, everybody's listed with their handles. IMDb has them listed with their handles without even a parentheses for the actual character names. But I mean, some of them are great. Papa Thermodyne, that's like a band name. It's so awesome.
Yeah, that's a cool ass name.
And I was trying to figure out what the deal was with that, and I guess they make like food storage containers, so I'm assuming it was probably what his trucks were outfitted with or something.
Yeah, or like he delivered for Thermodyne.
Yeah, I guess maybe. So we've got hot coffee,
Smiling Jack too.
Smiling Jack, hot coffee, the priest, the Red Baron, Chrome Angel and his ladies, Dallas Angel and Portland Angel, Blood, Electra, Warlock, the Hustler, the priest, of course, Ed Begley Jr. Great stuff, man.
How good of an idea is it to do what that woman was doing with the Winnebago? That's like genius, right?
Pretty smart.
You can't stop, but you can pull off on the shoulder.
Hey, man, Chrome Angel, that was all his idea.
Yeah. That's true.
This world is
a franchise.
This world is going mobile. You got to, adapt or die.
Exactly.
I love Charles Napier's face when he gets that idea. He's so proud of himself.
Oh yeah.
And I love when the salesman is trying to sell them on the Winnebago, and he's like, "It can fit 7. I've never done more than 3." She's such
really
a delight.
Cute.
I love her. She's great in this.
Yeah.
That's one of those faces that I think just popped up like on tons of 70s shows and stuff.
She was, I think, the gym teacher or something in Rock and Roll High School. She definitely was in Rock and Roll High School. I can't remember what role she had, though.
The coach, yeah.
Yeah,
She was in the Shadow
that's what I'm
as well
seeing.
as Woman in Taxi.
Ooh.
Whoa now. Whoa now.
You see that window up there?
I don't know if this is my favorite Jonathan Demme film. I wouldn't even, I'm curious, where do you guys see the Jonathan Demme feel of this movie? If you feel it, if you see it, do you think it's there?
I don't think I've seen enough, especially like I said, of the earlier films. I've seen Caged Heat. I've seen, what's the one with Melanie Griffith and Jeff Daniels?
Something Wild.
Something Wild. I always think that Miami Blues is a Jonathan Demme film, and it's not. No. It kind of is, but it's
George
not.
Armitage, but it's also Kenneth Utt produced that, and he was Demme's producer for a little bit, I think.
And all of Demme's guys are in that. I mean,
right.
He's, you talk that. I think that's why I always thought that. But Silence of the it's mostly the later stuff for me. So I don't know. Having not seen Melvin and Howard, which just from knowing about it and having read about it over the years, seems like that would probably have more of the feel of this than a lot of the other films of his that I've seen, at least.
I really like earlier Demme than later Demme. Like, he was doing this thing in Silence of the Lambs, the scene where Clarice and her roommate are talking to each other, and he plants the camera right in front of them, and they talk to the camera, and it's this kind of almost too close of a close-up. And he started doing that so much in Philadelphia that I was just like, wow, what the fuck are you doing? And I really didn't like the way that Philadelphia was shot. I was just like, this is very just, it's too much of this head-on talk to the camera thing. So he kind of turned me off with that one. So I'm much more of like Married to the Mob, Swing Shift, this one, of course. And then Stop Making Sense. I was more that, like, I guess, mid-period. And of course, Silence of the Lambs, I think, is the best one of his. And that's the one I go back to all the time.
What about you, Cullen?
He has so many movies I haven't seen. The one I was comparing this to in my head was Fighting Mad, which I think he made right before this.
Yeah.
Which I like quite a bit. And, it shares with it a more like rural Americana sort of setting. It's like Peter Fonda going after like land developers. That one's a little bit more tense and like angry, whereas this one is, a little bit more laid back and, and fun. But, also sort of focuses on people sort of on the fringe, sort of left out of mainstream society. So I definitely see I think these Fighting Mad and this you could, pair up pretty nicely together thematically.
I think for me, now I've seen this, I've seen Stop Making Sense, obviously Philadelphia and Silence of the Lambs. I had never thought about that, the correlation between Silence of the Lambs and that. I noticed it today when I was watching it, because I watched it today, again, coincidentally, where they do that in the scene where he's asking her about the lambs, and they keep going closer and closer and closer into, like you said, Mike, almost where it's like to the point where you're uncomfortable, but that's the point in that movie. And then I hadn't thought about it in Philadelphia. I barely remember that movie, though, but that's not maybe for the best, but that's not my kind of movie in a lot of ways.
It felt more like a made-for-TV movie.
It was
like Disease of the Week type of thing, almost.
Yeah, it was on the other day, and that was the first time I noticed that. My wife and I caught like the very tail end of it, and I was like, "Oh, he's really pushing that close-up thing here." It made sense in Silence of the Lambs because he was doing that POV thing where we get so many shots of her point of view and then people looking at her. It's so much about, everybody's looking at her because she's young and she's a woman and she's a woman and
she's short.
She's 5'5". Yeah, and she's tiny.
Yeah, that scene with all the tall guys in the elevator, just like pointing out how different she is from everybody. Yeah. I thought he really handled that movie so well. And then it just felt like Philadelphia was so clunky to me. I didn't go and see like Beloved or Rachel Getting Married or any of those. I did finally check out The Manchurian Candidate, and I was just like, it's okay, but I like the original so much.
I was about to say, Manchurian Candidate is the most recent movie of his that I've seen, and it was a remake. It was like you could watch the original and get just about as much, if not more, because the original came first.
Yeah.
It's not anything special. The remake's not. And it's unfortunate because it has a good cast. Meryl Streep, Denzel Washington, Liev Schreiber.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think for me, it's between Stop Making Sense, obviously, as a Heads fan, Talking Heads fan. But if we're talking movie, I mean, does it get better than Silence of the Lambs? Do movies get better than Silence of the Lambs? Because it's a movie that, like, I think for me, it's probably up there for like a goddamn near perfect movie, if not a perfect movie.
Didn't we talk about perfect movies last time?
We did.
Maybe after the show.
This
is one that I consider that where everything, and I'm not talking about 15 things wrong with Silence of the Lambs.
Whoa! Cinema wins, bro. It's
whoa! Mark's YouTube
score,
series just went mad.
Score, the cast, the script, the editing, it all gels. I mean, it's a movie that you can and the pacing, which I think is definitely an improvement on this movie, like you mentioned, Chris, is just, you can watch it, and I don't know, it's at least 2 hours or very close to.
It's under 2 hours by 2 minutes.
And it never feels like it. You can just watch it all the way through, and it just moves at a perfect pace for a film. And I think I agree.
The book and the movie are practically identical.
Yeah, it's a very good adaptation.
My only issue with the movie is they left out what Buffalo Bill says when he dies. Because I honestly felt like that was a really good little addition. Because when he's like lying there dead after she shot him, he goes, "What's it like to be so beautiful?" And like, that's great. Like, and I was doing a little investigating. I saw a picture of him without the goggles on at some point. So they must have shot an alternate ending. But that's like, for me, I think you're right. Like, I think it's just a perfect movie. Like, I don't know. It's just so damn good. And then you have Red Dragon and Hannibal. So,
It's about time that people gave Hannibal another chance, is a headline I read on Reddit the other day, and I was just like,
no, really?
Downvote.
What is there to give a second chance? It was a major movie directed by a massive director, and it flopped hard.
For good reason.
Flopped so hard. The script was so bad that the people who made the original movie didn't even want to get involved, other than Anthony Hopkins. And, like, even he probably shouldn't have gotten involved. Actually, he shouldn't have gotten involved. And then everybody would just laugh that movie out of the building. He lends it, like, a minor sense of credibility by being in it.
I was going to change the topic and say this is the second Demme film you and I have talked about on your show.
What was the other one we talked about?
The TV movie he did.
Oh, the
Who Am I This Time?
Right, Who Am I This Time?
That's right.
Yeah.
The Vonnegut story.
I remember you guys talking about
I think that was something I passed on a while back, huh?
Yeah, it was really good. You're right, Cullen. Yeah, that was good too.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
And that kind of has a similar feel to this sort of small town Americana, nice little ensemble cast. And, smaller because it's based on the story.
It could take place in that same town, though. It's that same, it's like a slice of life story. I mean, if you're not into slice of life stories, this movie's not going to be for you. Because it really is just like a week in the lives of these characters, these people who live in the rural Midwest.
One of the things I think this movie does very well, Lauren was a few minutes late when I was rewatching it. And so I had to catch her up on like the first 10 minutes. And it took me most 5 minutes to explain all the characters and all their backstories that we learn. And I think this movie does a good job of having a lot of characters that have a lot of life and just showing you a tiny bit of it, and you can like pick up and it's like, who they are.
Yeah, I would agree.
There's not much plot, but there's a ton of story.
Right. And I think we have the search for the what would you call them? The people, the people that are using this incorrectly. That's kind of becomes the plot, and also the tool to give us more little slices of life throughout the film. But they're all. I wonder if it's that they're so well drawn, or if it's just that everybody's got a nice little quirk that you can grasp onto, like hot coffee with all her talk about. Like, I didn't even realize that there were coffee snobs back in the back that long ago, and coffee snobs who are also sex workers, and and a delightful woman.
They usually go hand in hand. I mean,
but you get those, get that, and and you mentioned earlier, Cullen, about the brother. You or Mike saying, is this what he wanted with his life, to be a small town basketball coach or whatever, PE coach, I guess, and is the coach of the basketball team, which is me having gone to a small school. The coaches coached multiple sports and stuff, and or is it what he fell into? It kind of seems like they've all fallen into something, and except for Spider, who uses his dad as an excuse not to fall anywhere. But they have those nice little touches where you can keep everybody straight and it doesn't become confusing, even with all the different characters, which I appreciate, because I am easily confused when there are characters who just all run into each other, blend into each other.
I love the old lady who's just sort of telling her entire life story.
And he cuts her wire.
I love it.
What a bastard you are, Spider. No, I enjoyed this movie a lot, Mark. It's it feels like it could have been made. I'm not going to say by anybody, because again, I don't inherently feel the Jonathan Demme thing going on. But if you think about other things, like Cullen mentioned, like Who Am I This Time, or that Peter Fonda movie that sounds absolutely insane, it kind of falls in line with it. But I wish that there were more movies like this. They don't make movies like this anymore, where it's just like a day in the life. Like, look, I get it. This is not the most popular kind of story to tell, but there's something to be said for just watching characters going about their daily lives, and their daily lives are kind of more interesting than yours.
I got like a Winesburg, Ohio, like Sherwood Anderson sort of feel almost.
Yeah,
it's a little R-townish as well.
Oh yeah, it's a good comparison too.
A wacky R-town, that's for sure.
CB town.
But nobody's like so oddball that it just becomes kind of almost parody after a while. I mean, you have the nutcases, and you've got the Nazi, and you've got the little hustler kid, but they're not overdrawn or overblown.
Even the Nazi is not like Nazi-ish. He's just like a really like nuts guy screaming about communists.
And he's pretty racist.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean, compared to 2021.
Yeah, compared to now.
Yeah.
This guy was
he's quaint.
Yeah.
There was a line at the end of the movie, and maybe y'all remember it better than I do, but Paul Amat is, when he's talking to Candy Clark, he says something on the lines of like, everybody in this town is somebody else on the radio. And there did seem to be this idea that they're all using the CB, to fill some sort of void in their life, to like reach out, to talk to other people, to make these connections. And it all seems pretty, genuine for them.
Just like we are now.
Well, it's like the internet, you come on here and you're not maybe how you are in real life, and things get amplified, like your racism and your sexuality maybe. And
but you're right. I mean, you're totally right. I mean, there is kind of, when you think about it in more modern terms, obviously everybody can be somebody on the internet, or TikTok, or whatever platform you choose. Even us TikTokers, the four of us on TikTok, podcasters. I mean, it's
World's
the same thing.
Longest TikTok.
I think anything over like 5 minutes is probably puts you in that conversation.
I just had to point out that Spider's real name is Blaine.
Right. With the Y.
And the only thing I can ever think of when I hear that name is Pretty in Pink.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, that works.
insert that quote here, Chris. Or have you not seen Pretty in Pink? Is that another movie you haven't seen?
Whoa. Did you see that? He was like,
wow.
There was some
I think
anger.
He just came for you.
He said, another movie you haven't seen, motherfucker. Like, what answer will give you less of a hard on? What answer will make your erection go away? I have seen it. I just don't.
Okay.
I just don't. I don't
cut it all out.
I'm not cutting this out. You said it.
This is going to be this is going to be the preview clip.
That's right.
Wayne, that's not a name. That's a major appliance. It's John Cryer's famous line from the fucking movie. Jesus.
I have.
Somebody out there is going to get it.
I've only seen it one time a long time ago. It's been to John Hughes month. What can we say about 16 Candles?
Oh.
We just had a little marathon of those because of my daughter. So I've seen Some Kind of Wonderful, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, and 16 Candles all within the last week.
Nice and saccharine.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They were favorites when I was a kid. I saw most of them in the theater and on HBO constantly growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Begley, would you give this film Citizens Band, which you had not seen before, would you give it a pass or a watch?
I would give it a watch. I enjoyed it, and I will watch it again, most definitely.
What about you, Cullen?
I think I've given every movie on the show, on your podcast, a watch, and I will give this one a watch.
I don't know if you gave the Owl movie a watch, Cullen.
I did. Didn't I?
I don't know.
Well, I guess we'll have to go back and listen. But
Check the tape.
This is a delightful movie. Wonderful cast of characters, quirky, very different. I think I would watch it.
What about you, Mr. Mike White?
Oh yeah, I would definitely tell people to watch it. This is actually, it's been one that I've been wanting to do on my show for a long time, and I reached out to, so I've spoke to Candy Clark a few times, and I reached out to her years and years ago about a Elliot Gould movie that she was in. And I was like, oh, I'd like to talk to you a bit about that. And she's like, I was only in there for it was weird because I sent her an email and she called me immediately, which was just strange. So I'm getting this, who the hell's calling? And it's Candy Clark. And she was just like, I was only in that movie for 2 scenes. No, I don't want to talk about it. I barely remember it. And I was like, all right, well, how about Citizens Band? She's like, that movie did so poorly. They were giving away tickets for people to see it, and it was the second half of a double feature. They couldn't give that movie away. No, I don't want to talk about it.
No.
I'm like, oh, come on. It's a great movie. But she was just like, no, I'm good. But I think I ended up kind of talking her into it a little bit when we were talking about American Graffiti and what else did I talk to her about? Man Who Fell to Earth. And so then I was like, and you were in Citizens Band. She was like, oh yeah, that was a lot of fun, and just told me a little bit about it. But yeah, I've been trying to get Brickman, Lamat, all these folks. Luckily, Harry Northup talked to me, called me a pea picker, which was fantastic. But yeah, no, this is a favorite of mine, and so I'm very happy to be talking about it with you guys.
I was going to say that then Candy Clark was like, you want to talk about American Graffiti? I've talked about that too many times.
Yeah.
What the fuck do you want to talk about?
Frankly, I got to her through more American Graffiti, and then we kind of worked backwards.
Oh.
So, yeah.
So you did a little audible there, a little shimmy shuffle, not
exactly.
American Graffiti, the sequel.
Yeah. I just want to talk about the sequel. And then she was so open to talk about whatever that we just kept going for a while. So she was a real pleasure. Once we got going, I think she realized that I wasn't too much of a flake.
She's been great on your show.
Oh, thank you.
I'm pretty sure I've heard both those interviews or, both those episodes with she's pretty fun.
Yeah.
And I love it when she pops up in movies. She's usually got a little bit of a quirky angle to give her characters.
Yeah,
this might be one of the more normal. This might be one of the more normal characters for her. Actually,
she's probably the most normal person in the entire movie. I mean, other than when she goes toe to toe with Papa Thermodine about the cooked dog.
I love that. She's just
pretty awesome.
She just goes with it.
Yep.
A little bit tough. Could have simmered longer.
Love it.
Someday I'll see American Graffiti, but that day was not today. I saw Citizens Band instead, which I enjoyed. So, yeah, I would say check it out. I mean, my issue, probably the bigger issue here, is it's kind of hard to get a hold of, which is unfortunate.
That's true.
Yeah,
which is unfortunate. There's no Kino, there's no Shout Factory, nothing. This is kind of in abeyance in a vault somewhere.
And I don't get it. it's not like this is wall-to-wall music.
No.
And,
It's on for people that are listening that want to check it out. It is currently on Pluto TV, probably the worst possible venue to watch it on. But, I made it through, and it was the same. It was the same thing we watched. It was open mat, same picture quality, basically. So
it's surprising it hasn't been cleaned up and remastered or something, or re-released. I mean, again, if everything else is getting remastered and re-released, this is a film directed by a major American filmmaker, so with a lot of people who are in it. So
it would be perfect for the people that put out Rancho Deluxe Fun City editions. This is something I could absolutely see them doing. It fits with a lot of their films that they've put out.
They totally
Those
should. Yeah.
quirky indie 70s films as like kind of their bread and butter.
Yeah.
So if any of you folks are listening.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of my bigger issue is just it's hard to get a hold of. It's hard to find. It's on Pluto TV. Not the best place, like you said, to watch it. But other than that, if you're looking for something interesting to watch about a topic that you probably have no idea about, Citizens Band is fun. And it's not about bands, which apparently was like the big issue when the movie came out. It's not about a real band.
That's like that Black Christmas fiasco.
Right.
Oh, people are going to think it's a blaxploitation film. It's like, what? Who the fucking idiot would think that?
Only the people who think they're going to think that are the ones. So.
Citizens Band. I mean, but who doesn't like rock and roll movies?
Ubiquitous at the time.
That's stupid.
CB.
Yeah,
I guess they could have called it CB.
Yeah.
Right. CB radio or something.
They had FM right around then.
Yeah, because Handle with Care makes so much more sense.
Nah, it's not even uttered in the film, is it?
I don't think so.
No. I don't know where that... I'm not even sure what that title is in reference to.
Well, it's in reference to your handle, your CD handle.
Which, if people aren't going to get Citizens Band, who's going to get the...
Right.
Who's going to get that connection?
Exactly.
Handle with Care.
What about the handle, though? What about your CB handle? What about it?
Yeah, well, right.
With Care what? That makes even less... I'm just saying, that doesn't make any sense either. Citizens Band, when I was reading that little thing, it was like Citizens Band was a title that didn't make any sense. I was like, really? Okay, sure, why not? Because that makes this... Then that even makes this harder to find. Because then it has 2 goddamn titles. So... on top of everything else. So maybe we need a re-release of the movie to clarify the title situation, get one title, it's Citizens Band. But I would have loved to see this movie come out in a nicer format. I would own this on Blu-ray if it came out. It was pretty good. Another good suggestion, Mr. Begley.
Thank you.
Well,
I mean, this was luck. I mean, it could have been I didn't figure it was a dud, even though very few people had seen it, and some of the critics, probably had complaints along the lines of yours, like pacing and things like that. But with that cast, I felt this was a pretty good bet. And then I know that Mike immediately responded to this as a pick for the month. So that led me to believe it's probably not a piece of shit.
I don't know. I like some shitty movies.
Hell, so do I.
Same here. So on that
There's
note,
also a good...
Go ahead, Colin.
There's a good shit joke in this movie.
The cows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the cows, They'd have to learn how to shit sideways. In the background, you see a huge cow turd fall out of the truck. I like that scene.
Yeah, I like the stuff with the cows. And then that's where Papa Thermodine finally gets his cattle ranch.
Mm-hmm.
Nice little way to wrap it up at the end. And everybody's happy that he's not dead.
Yeah, right. So... on that note, it remains to be seen if I will be happy with next week's pick, but let's play a preview for the final movie of Begley on Begley Month.
A controversial subject. A brilliant actor. A powerful and touching film. A movie which will take you into a world never dealt with in a major motion picture. A father searches for his missing daughter, only to find she has been used in a sordid and shocking way. Nothing you have ever done, seen, or imagined can prepare you for the experience of hardcore.
Turn it off!
George C. Scott. Hardcore.
Turn it off! Turn it off!
So that's right. On the final episode of Begley on Begley Month, we're going to be talking about hardcore.
Ooh.
Turn it off. Now this is really Begley on Begley action. This is where that could really come into play.
Whoa.
Hey.
Never seen it.
Yeah, it's something.
It's something.
No, I picked this one because, as I've already mentioned, I'm sure this was one of my favorite watches of 2020. One of my favorite new to me watches of 2020, and it's got Ed Begley Jr. in it. Fits the thing. The Paul Schrader film. Peter Boyle. I mean, how fucking you go wrong?
Produced by John Milius.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Mike, you
It's
like
interesting.
this film?
You know, I don't know if I've ever made it all the way through this film.
Oh, that's a no then.
Yeah. I might have.
Great.
I mean, I think I was expecting something more lascivious when I watched it, especially with that name, you know.
That's why I never watched it when I was younger, because that's what I was afraid of. Like, I didn't want to get, that's the second your mom walks into the room.
What are you watching? Yeah.
Oh, it's just called hardcore.
Right.
I mean, it has George C. Scott in it, so how bad can it really be?
Yeah.
I remember liking it. It's been a while.
It's about another unseen subculture like Taxi Driver. That's what
I like it.
That's what Wikipedia would lead me to believe.
I can switch it to Blue Collar for
I'm
Paul
excited.
Schrader.
I love George C. Scott. He's great. So I'm all on.
It's interesting. There's all this. Read up on Calvinism, because it's a big part of the movie. So
there you go. Well, if that doesn't excite you, I don't know what will. So until then, Cullen, where can people find you?
People can find me in a new podcast from you and Mike, The Shabby Detective. Thank y'all for inviting me to do the closing theme for Columbo podcast. Other than that, I am at pulp-serenade.com. Not as often as I should, but the URL is paid for, and there is content.
I like that. The URL is paid for, and there's content. Sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Plenty of old content.
Exactly.
Something new will come up at some point.
What about you, Mr. Begley?
you can find me at wakeupheavy.com. And the show, Wake Up Heavy, is wherever you listen to podcasts. And I am on social media. I think I messed up my name last time. It's just at Wake Up Heavy on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Not at wakeupheavy.com, like I said last time.
What about you, Mr. Mike White? What's going on over at the projection booth?
We are talking about French films this month at the projection booth. And actually, the same day, there's going to be an episode with me and Cullen. And
Whoa.
Incredible Professor Judith Main. We're going to be talking about I Can't Sleep, which really doesn't have anything to do with not being able to sleep, as far as I could tell. Didn't really talk about that on the episode. But we've got one more French film. We're talking about Buñuel's Belle de Jour, and then we're talking about dirty movies in March. Come on over, kids.
Yeah,
you want to get
hardcore.
real hardcore. Yeah.
Mine's a little nice segue into your month of actual dirty movie.
Uh-huh.
Intentional porno segues. Oh, boy. As for me, cstachu.com, cstachiw.com. That's my link tree. Go there. Whatever. Culturecast.com, patreon.com/culturecast. That's where you can go to give $1 if you want. If not, hey, I get it. Times are hard and everybody's struggling. Mark, Cullen, Mike, thank you guys so much for joining me. Mark, you're 3 for 3.
Hey, I have good taste in movies.
You do.
Did anyone ever say you didn't?
Probably. That's probably why I don't have very many listeners to my own show.
And
No listeners, no friends.
you've got us, though.
Oh, That's not what I need. I'm just kidding.
And
just kidding.
We'll catch you on the next episode.